Now at this point we're going to kind of get into talking about kind of preparing for a suspect acquisition. And this may not be kind of all of your, this is a little bit tailored towards kind of, law enforcement or something like that. So to kind of preface it, starting off there. But, I want to kind of just kind of bring up the idea because there are some kind of different approaches that you can take and some tools that we're going to talk about which can be helpful in kind of fingerprinting or footprinting, however you want to describe it, the suspect system. So systems that you don't necessarily know a lot about, right? This is something, these are kind of approaches that we took when I was at CERT to kind of get a better understanding of what we were going to be confronting, right? Because you don't really have the same people that you can ask the questions to, like what is your operating system, what applications are running. So we're going to talk about kind of approaches we can use to kind of overcome those hurdles. So you have a suspect, right? In our case, we have this IP address, right, of our suspect. That Zybox, which is at 192.168.51.200, right? Ignore the 138 address. That's me screwing up. So we're going to assume it's this 200 address, right? You're assuming that you followed the correct legal process, and you will from this point forward as well. You really need to develop a collection strategy. And the problem is that it's difficult to develop a collection strategy in a suspect situation because you don't have the same information. You can't get the same information that you could get from a victim, right? You can't ask anybody, really. So you really need to kind of think this through and have a plan in place, but be flexible with it, right? And kind of be able to kind of have a plan for multiple scenarios, right? If we're confronted with this, this is what we'll do. If we're confronted with that, this is what we'll do. If we get cooperation from here, this is what we'll do. That type of thing. So you need to be flexible and have kind of, don't be rigid and like, this is how we're going to do things, because it will change, almost assuredly. One of the ways that we're going to talk about is kind of using, is an ability to kind of identify information about the suspect system. And we're going to use an application called Nmap, or in our case is Nmap. We're going to use the GUI interface for it. But it allows you to kind of do some system fingerprinting or footprinting, I guess, however you wanted to describe it. It's basically us scanning the victim system to kind of get an idea of what it's actually doing, or what it actually is. And I want to make it clear that no matter what, if we're dealing with a victim organization, we're doing a suspect organization, you're doing something internally or whatever, the fundamental acquisition or collection process doesn't change, right? It's still important to document what you're doing. It's still important to kind of, to have proper chain of custody and things like that, to identify the relevant evidentiary sources, right, and take the measures to do that. So now, you remember this from day one, way back day one, right? We had this kind of acquisition flow. We'll kind of come back to this a little bit, but I'm going to skirt through this a little bit quickly because a lot of the slides are duplicative. But basically, we've identified a item, or identified a suspect or a suspect system, right? Now we're going to kind of have some of these questions that we want to ask the suspect, but it's going to be difficult to get the answers to those questions. Some things like where's the machine located, we can get from things from like GeoIP or location-based things or registration information associated with the domain. The operating system we can get through things like using Nmap and ZenMap, which we'll talk about how you do that, as well as applications. We can get the information like is it a standalone or hosted system based on kind of where it's located, things like that. Maybe it's at a hosting facility or it's in somebody's home, right? Who else may have access to the system? That can often be a difficult one to access. And kind of one of the most important discussion points is this an end node or is it an intermediary node? And by that I mean, is this kind of a hop in the chain, a link in the chain, or is it the end, like the guy is sitting at the computer, right? And that can be sometimes difficult to get, but sometimes it can be beneficial, or sometimes it can be something that's easier to understand than you think, or easier to interpret than you think. Oftentimes you're going to have, when you're dealing with a suspect, kind of target, right? And we're dealing with this kind of 192.168.51.200 address, is that may just be kind of a black box with an IP address, something in a hosting facility that's basically just something that they're using as a proxy or a VPN that they're just hopping through, right? It's really not it's just kind of like like it could be like 2,000 other systems that are sitting in that same hosting facility, right? But some of the information that you can get on, kind of more detailed information you can get about that system, you can get from a service provider, or the ISP who's actually providing the services for that IP address. They may be able to tell you kind of incoming and outgoing traffic, which can give you an idea of what they may be using it for. You can kind of use some undercover operations. Obviously, be careful there, right? You need to be concerned with kind of how you approach that. You also don't want to give away that you're looking into them, so this is definitely a delicate situation. And I want to stress contacting the appropriate legal person before you whoever's going to be prosecuting the case to go through with that or managing the case. So some of the investigative tools, if you're law enforcement in particular, right? So, subpoenas, court orders, trap and trace, so on and so forth. Like I said, this is a little bit. Title III is wiretap, by the way. If you are if you're not law enforcement, don't worry about it. But I did kind of preface this. It does have a little bit of a law enforcement swing. And then eventually network reconnaissance, which is what we're going to focus on.